Hey there everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations, and we're going to be playing today with the new transfer, Collage de Fleurs from IOD. Now the one thing that's cool about this transfer is, you know, some of the florals are big pattern florals. You have to kind of cut in between and that sort of thing if you're trying to do smaller projects. This one is great because all the flowers are separate already. So it's perfect for smaller spaces. Just made a joy. So what I thrifted for $7. So this was $9.99 and I had 30% off. So for $7, I got this. So super cool. It means that this is great because we've got this small area here and this small area here for us to be able to put transfers on. I could put them around here too, but I want to see what it looks like with these kinds of florals on it. If I wanted to put vines around, I could, but I think it'd be overkill. Sometimes you just have to kind of say that's enough. But I'm kind of playing with the idea of these yellows and kind of peachy corals. So what I'm thinking I'm doing is I'm going to do a bit of a fade. I'm going to do DIY cake batter at the top, and I'm gonna do the DIY Cowgirl coral from the bottom, and then they'll kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And I have a little bit of Carnival Red in case I decide that it needs a little bit of that blending happening. So I've already got this tightened up. It just needed some hex key action up in here to be able to tighten everything up. It was wobbly. And I'm willing to bet that's why it got donated, which is crazy. Hex keys, guys, just tighten those babies up. And it's good to go. It's really solid. So I'm going to start by adding my color here and there. And then we'll be back together when it comes time to do some of the blending action here, because you guys know how to straight paint something, especially with a product like DIY, which is clay-based paint, where we're gonna get some texture happening. But what I envision is here I'm gonna have the coral to apply my transfers to. So I'll probably do a little bit more of the yellowy ones. And then the top, I'll have more of the yellow background, so I'll apply a little bit more of those corally yellow ones. I don't know. I'll wait until I cut them out. I haven't even opened the pack yet. So we'll kind of cut them out and mix and match and see what fits and works together. But our first job is to get some paint on. This piece has one really light base coat on, and what I'm doing now is putting on the second coat of, right now I'm working on a Cowgirl coral, and I will take it down roughly to about here. You can see I've kind of extended it down a little bit further on some of the rough coat, but I'll take it to about here, and then I'm going to start painting the yellow just as it's upside down because it's easier to be able to see, and take this just close. So if my coral comes to here, I'll take my yellow to here, and then I'll flip it over and we'll come back and then we'll start doing some of the blending. I don't want to take the paint exactly to each other at this point yet, because I want to be able to play with it a little bit. So I'm going to get some of the base done, right? So that this is all kind of happening. And then when it comes to starting to, you know, feather it in, I'll come back. But right now it's just basic painting. I'm going to get all that done. And then as I start to take the colors together, I'll come back. So I'm just getting some of my color on right now. What I do have is I've got 3 brushes out. So I've got one brush for the coral, one brush for the cake batter. And then I have a very light, soft brush. I'm using a fairly small one because this is a small surface, but this is the separate brush that I'm going to use for the blending. So it always requires more brushes when you start getting into the blending end of things. All right, so when it comes time to maybe start doing your blending, I still have to paint this because I had this upside down. Let me turn you just a little bit further here so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to take this color, such a pretty color, Cowgirl Coral. And then what I'm going to want to do, because this is my darker color, I'm going to want to just get some of that excess paint coming up around my posts all the way around. And then we get to switch over. And then we're going to, for each leg, I'm going to get more of my yellow, of my cake batter coming down all the way around. I've already got enough paint on the legs. So this coat that I'm adding, this is what I'm going to be blending. So I'm giving it enough paint to be able to do that. And then I'm taking my little blending brush and I'm just adding a little bit of water. It's easier, I find, to start taking my light color down into the dark. And I'm using that water to help me be able to do that. This brush is so soft that it helps me get that transition. And then when I have that happening, I can start feathering up a bit too, so that we get that paint dragging up. And so we start to see that blending. And that's the beauty of the DIY paint, is that we start getting those colors merging. Now, I need just a touch of this coral color in the back here. And the beauty of this, you can go sideways if you need to. I've got a brush hair hanging out here. So you can go side by side. But we want to just kind of softly feather it so it fades in. This, I will take and just dry it off completely so that when I move on to the next leg, that's already dried and ready to go. Next step in the process for us is I want to give this a light sand. I'm not looking at wanting to do a major distressing on it, so it'd be a light distress, but I do want to, you know, any chalk paint or clay paint, when it dries, has just a slight little roughness to it. It's because you've got the paint particles sticking up. So just doing a light sand, just that little bit that I just did right there with a 220 grit sandpaper is enough. You'll feel the textural difference between where you didn't sand and where you did. So I want to sand down a piece. I want to dust it all off, and then I am going to seal it with Big Top. You will notice with DIY paint, it will dry darker. It'll dry more the color. Let me just see if I've got a container back here somewhere. So you can see here that the in the jar color is darker than the dried color. Once we seal it, whether with a polyacrylic or with a wax, it will go back more toward the jar color. So we're going to get that sealed. For this piece, because we know I want to apply the transfers, I am sealing with a polyacrylic. The transfers love a polyacrylic. I get asked all the time, can I apply transfers onto plain dry paint? If it's an all-in-one paint, then it's a resounding yes. It's already got a top coat built in. It's the same as sealing over top of a poly. If it is a clay paint or a chalk paint, a paint that does not have a built-in sealer, it's a little bit of a yes-no answer. It's not as straightforward. First of all, the paint has to be fully dry, not just dry to the touch. So if you wanted to try to put transfers on this is only had overnight, I would probably give it a couple more days. Because if there's still moisture below the paint layers, you know, like this has, the top has 3 layers of paint, it still feels a little cold. Now it could be just because it's cold in here, but there's a temperature difference there to here because there's more paint here. So it's not fully dry. We know it's not cured. I mean, on cured paint, you're probably going to have a better success rate. But because this isn't fully dry, if I tried to put the transfer directly onto the painted surface, I may risk the transfer lifting the paint. So, you know, there's a risk to it. And you're better off if you've painted this and gone away on vacation for a week and come back, you're going to have better success. You also, if you didn't clean off any of the oils underneath the paint, there's a bit of a risk there too. But can you? Absolutely, you can. Just really, really, really give it days to be able to dry. How many days is going to depend upon the humidity, what's happening, what was the wood surface like underneath that, etc. The same goes for a waxed surface. When you first apply the wax, it's wet. You leave it overnight, it's kind of dried, it's hardened, you can buff it, but it's still not cured. So wax, you can apply the transfers on wax, but you are best to leave it for weeks for that wax to really have dried, really cured. You don't have any moisture left in there. And again, then when you go to protect your transfers on a waxed surface, you can't do a poly top coat anymore. You must seal them with wax. And that's not as good a protection as doing it with a poly. So I'm going to get this sanded, lightly distressed. I'm going to apply my polyacrylic and let it dry for a couple of hours before we come back to apply the transfers on. Okay, we are good to go on this. I love these two colors together. I haven't used them together before, but they're really pretty. And you know what, just kind of a little springy and fun, and you know. We are looking at using this transfer. So Collage de Fleurs, and it's got a lot of big pages. I mean, I'm not going to use the ivy at all on this, but it's going to be perfect for other projects. There's like red flowers in here. I was thinking of using these kind of peachy tones. See how they kind of fit with that coral. Whoops, there's the coral. So with that coral color, I was thinking of using them on the top, and there's these two, but there's another full page of them, of 3. And then there is also 2 pages of these yellowy creamy ones. So I thought the yellowy creamy ones down here. So I'm gonna definitely use these 2 little ones. I think this guy is too big. So I'm definitely gonna use these 2 for sure. And again, I'll save that vine for something else. So you know. So this guy, that's maybe too big. I want to see if maybe on one of the other sheets of white. And then there's like look at all those big peach ones, and there's big red ones, and look at that. Look at that tulip. So nice. And then these little, they look like little violets almost, so that's awesome. There's so many options in here. And I like the fact that they're set up as like a bunch of individual flowers. So yeah, like this one, I think, is a much better size. Maybe this big one. Are you smaller? Yeah, you're smaller. Okay. All right, let me get my flowers picked out and cut out, and then we'll come back and we'll just do a quick little application of it and go from there. All right, this is my rough layout for the top. However, I end up with this big kind of technically white space, although it's yellow on me, which I'm debating whether or not I have to add another flower in the center. But I figured let's put these 3 down first and we'll see. So I'm going to put this one down first, my big one. So I'm gonna lift it up, peel the backing paper off, and then now this is my transfer. So I want to ensure that I kind of angle it, and I'm going pretty close to the edge on this. And I'm just going to take the stick that comes in the packet, and I'm going to rub all over this to release the transfer onto my sealed surface. Now I'm being careful by the edges only because I've cut it fairly close to the transfer so I could see the overlap, and I don't want to be scraping off my new paint because it's not fully cured, so it's not as hardy as it would be down the road. I mean, if you're doing this on a piece, you can see already, see how that's lifting right there? It already was releasing. And you can start to, you know, lift your transfer up slowly and see what pieces, you know, so here I've got a little outline of this. It wasn't quite released yet. So it enables you to kind of go slow, make sure that you've got all the details off rather than taking the whole thing away and then trying to match things up again later. You know, just be kind to yourself and make it as easy on yourself as you can. There we go. And I just like to take my sheet and burnish it in. But look how lovely that is. That looks great on that yellow. Now this one, I had wanted to kind of do it in such a way that that little leaf kind of curled in there. So the nice thing about these is that you can overlap them, no problem. So I'm just looking to angle this to fit in, take up as much territory as possible. This edge here, this leaf, is overlapping this petal. And let me just see if I can get my nails, and you can see how that overlaps, no problem. All right, I just want to include you in my thought process. So this was the little one that I had done, and if I took it out to the edge, the same as these two, you could see that I had that big space in the middle. And I had thought maybe I could drop that little red one in, which would be okay. But it introduces that extra color, and I didn't choose to add any of the carnival red in the painting. So the other option was, why don't I just do another big flower? And I like that best. So I don't need to go with any of those, and I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, but that's what I'm gonna do. I wanted to give you a bit of a top-down view so that you could see the difference in the tones here. I love the color variation with having this with the yellow and then those pale yellow flowers down over top of the coral. I think the contrast is really pretty. there's so much that you can do with this particular transfer because the florals are all separate. You don't have big stems to worry about. You're able to mix and match them, merge them together. Here I had layered in one little leaf just to fill the center of that one. And, you know, here I had a little trio that I laid down first and then put the flower over top so it's layered in behind. And that's the only thing to consider when you are looking at doing something like this, is take a look at what you want on top, what you want behind, because you can layer these. You know, you can pop a little leaf in behind the flower. You don't have to do any cutting to be able to get it exactly the right shape. If you put it down first, you can put your flower over top of it. And so, you know, I elected to have this one down first, but then this one gets to layer over top and this one layers over top of those. So you create some depth in your piece, which is a real advantage in making them look a little more dimensional rather than totally flat. And that's the beauty of a transfer like this one, that you can take and layer those blooms in any way that you want. And your piece is never going to look the same as anybody else's as a result, because you're not using any of the pages, any of the blooms the same way. Let me know what you think of this one, guys. I still have to top coat this, so it still requires another coat of poly over the top of the transfers. I don't have to do the rest of the body, but I need to do the transfers to be able to seal and protect them. And then this one's finished. Cute little piece, little thrift store table, couple of transfers. And I was gonna say it looks good as new, but you know what? Looks better than new. Let me know what you think of this one, guys. Hope you picked up a couple of tips along the way, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.